Good evening, everybody. How are you? This is Enrique. I want to talk about a very important subject, which is young Hispanic men and Hispanic fatherhood. Right now, in this country, especially, it's a long struggle to be a Hispanic man, especially being a Hispanic man between the ages of 18 and 25. It's a demographic that is very vulnerable, that gets affected a lot by a lot of things, and I wanted to talk to this demographic at this moment. Young Hispanic men between the ages of 18 and 25. You have a lot of potential, untapped potential, where you could reach the stars, where you could do a lot of things. You could change the world, change your families, change your communities. But you can only do that if you look after yourselves and you make sure that you don't get in trouble. Because after African Americans, Hispanics are the second largest incarcerated group in the United States, and most Hispanic men that end up in prison is because they could not control their anger or control their emotions. They let their emotions cloud their judgment, and they are the first ones to go to prison. I understand that life can be difficult, especially if you're married or have a girlfriend and have children. It can be very difficult if you don't have an education or you don't have a skill. But I want to say that do not let your emotions cloud your judgment, because that's how a lot of our people end up arrested, end up incarcerated. And what happens is that it just repeats the cycle. Many Hispanic boys and girls end up with no male father at home, and those children grow up to be considered the same types of people. Um, my father was not really part of my life. My father left when I was 10 years old. And this is something I don't talk about with anybody. It's something private, but I'm never going to forget when a white American man, a gentleman, he must have been in his 50s or 60s, he came up to me at the door of my car. My mother was at a yard sale close to our old house over in Calamasa in California, and told me, you know what? You know, since you don't have a father, you're gonna grow up to be a gangbanger just like the rest of them. And I was 10 years old, and this is something that really affected me because, my mother raised me to the best of my ability, best of her ability. My mother raised me to be a good, decent human being. I was a model, an example, and then this gentleman that doesn't even know me, he just stereotyped me and stigmatized me just because of what I was. And it made a huge impact on me to the point that I did not want to be the stereotype of what a Hispanic man is in this country. And let me tell you, the Hispanic man stereotype in this country is very ugly. It's no different, and in many cases, just as bad or worse than the image that people have of African American males between the ages of 18 and 25. And, you know, I believe that the only way you could fight stigma and stereotypes is through education. That's why I was very active in education, to the point that I didn't really get involved in much activity as a teenager because I wanted to finish high school. I finished high school when I was 16 years old. I went to college at 17, and I got my associate's degree when I was 23 or 24. And I always fought that stereotype. But the only way young Hispanic men are going to have a future is that they need to stop procrastinating and being passive aggressive, and to get an education. As much as Hispanic men uh, hate reading a book, and I'm going to say this very clearly, most Hispanics don't like to read, don't like to study because they feel it's not part of their culture. But it's one of the reasons why the Hispanic community is suffering and struggling is because Hispanics refuse to get an education. And it's sad to say many Hispanic parents are even against their children getting education. Can you believe that? There are many Hispanics that don't want their children to get educated because they want them to be just like them, or they're afraid that if their children become successful that they don't have any value. People don't realize that education is the passport to the future. And education is the only way that Hispanic men are going to be able to get out of poverty, because working a menial job, or dealing drugs or slinging dope, doesn't get you anywhere. Yeah, it may get you fast money right away, but it's only temporary. It's not long term. And the moment you get busted, all that disappears. All that money, all those jewels, all those women, and what do you have left? A criminal record. And in this country, if you have a criminal record, it follows you for the rest of your life, and you'll never be able to have a future or to achieve your goals, because in this country, if you have a record, even if it's for something minimal, our country is not forgiving towards people that are convicts. So I really tell, young Hispanic men between the ages of 18 and 25, don't let the lure of easy money, fast cars, jewelry, and women tempt you, because that's what the devil uses. That's what the establishment uses, through mass media, through materialism, towards greed, all of that, to get Hispanic young men away from reaching their potential. The racist, fascist establishment's biggest fear is not the gangbanger Hispanics, but it's the educated Hispanics that can bring change and transform their future and transform their communities. That's the biggest fear that the racist, fascist establishment has against Hispanics. They don't want us to get educated. They don't want us to have degrees. They don't want us to move forward. Why? Because they want us to stay exactly where we are: ignorant, uneducated, dirty, and starving. Because when you have a population that is dirty, hungry, uneducated, and ignorant, it's much easier to control than a population that is healthy, wealthy, and educated. Think think about it. If you have a population that is not educated, it's much easier to manipulate them and to control them than a population that's educated. Because a population that is educated and wealthy and healthy, you cannot manipulate them. They're going to question you. They're going to ask you questions, and they're going to hold you accountable. And this is something that not only the government but the powers to be don't want. They don't want Hispanic young men to be educated, a good head on their shoulders, that don't allow the system and the establishment to tell them how to eat, what to think, and what to do. And I feel that one of the things that is very damaging and poisonous to the young Hispanic male is the media, popular culture. I feel that there are more young Hispanic men that want to be like Bad Bunny, or want to be like the cartels, than to be a neurologist, than to be a professor, than to be a lawyer, than to be an educator. Um, it takes hard work and dedication to achieve that. And I said this before: in the Asian community, which has been here for less years, and a lot of them are first generation immigrants, and they're able to prosper and get away from where they were and to establish themselves as respectable citizens. I think our community can do the same, and we could do a lot more, and we have a large potential. But the only way that's going to happen is that we need to start making changes within ourselves. We have to stop trying to, be friends and be allies with other people when we are enemies within our own people. There cannot be um, white white and Hispanic unity, black and Hispanic unity, Asian and Hispanic unity until there is Hispanic on Hispanic unity, meaning that we can only become acceptable when we become acceptable to ourselves. We cannot become acceptable to others if we cannot be acceptable to ourselves. Meaning that all Hispanics from all different countries and backgrounds and ethnicities, they need to put their differences aside and come together as one people. Because if we don't and we continue to stay divided, we are either going to breed out of existence, we're going to assimilate into the white or black culture, or we're going to become an untouchable caste, like you see in many parts of the world, which people are cursed and doomed in being born into that particular caste, and they're not able to move out and to become and reach their true potential. So I say this with all honesty because I was in that state myself. I was a young Hispanic male. Luckily, I had better direction, and my mother taught me values of education and morals and having discipline. But a lot of Hispanic men don't have that, and a lot of Hispanic men, young men, need it because I don't want to see more of our young Hispanic men getting shot, getting killed, getting beat up, getting arrested, and then leaving a whole entire generation of children orphans with no fathers, no uncles, no grandfathers, and who are going to fill the vacuum? The gangbangers and the criminals from the streets. And let me tell you, the gangs and the criminals, they don't care about these young Hispanic children. They don't care about them. They don't love them. They don't want to be there for them. They just want to use them as tools to infect our communities with drugs and guns and crime and violence. You go to any Hispanic neighborhood and that's what you see. It's not right. We need to do something to make our communities better. The only way we could do that is that we need to educate our young people, especially our young men, because I feel that our young men are the most demonized and hated group in this country. I have seen Hispanophobia everywhere, and it is very, very appalling and disgusting how the hatred of the Hispanic male is in this country, especially when it comes to the criminal justice system, and how people in the justice system want to have any chance they get to put any Hispanic man in prison and just to ruin them. We cannot continue to allow that. It's very important that we need to think, and we need to be aware of the consequences of our actions. We cannot play the victim any longer. We need to take responsibility for ourselves, responsibility for our own personal actions, because anything that happens to us affects our parents, it affects our children, it affects everyone around us. So please, I encourage every young Hispanic man that's out there who is listening or watching this message to please change. Do not let the racist people, the bigoted people, the ignorant people, the people that don't want to see you prosper. You have the opportunity to prosper. It's within your hands, but only if you choose to. So please, think about it. Don't let the lure of easy money, jewels, women, cars get to you, because remember, that's all temporary. What matters is what you invest for the future. You have to plant that seed. Take care.